Okay guys, today I'm going to run down my top 10 favorite characters in the Alien franchise, and this encompasses every film to feature a xenomorph, or at least within the world of Alien, not including Blade Runner if you count that, which is always debatable. Anyways, Alien characters. I figured this would be a good video to do because Alien Earth is coming up very soon. Also, it was Alien Day earlier this week, and I just love talking about the Alien franchise to begin with. So I'm going to run down my personal top 10 favorite characters. Again, this is my personal list, so my favorite characters might not necessarily be your favorite characters, but if you want to, leave your top 10, your top 5, or just your top 1, whatever you want to do down in the comments below. I would love to see which characters people resonate with. As well, this is not going to include the aliens themselves as characters, so I'm not going to include any xenomorphs or the Queen or the engineers or any of the humanoid-looking aliens that we've gotten throughout the course of the series. So I'm just kind of leaving this basically at humans and androids. But at number 10, I'm going to go with the character that Idris Elba played in Prometheus, which is Janek. Now, he was the captain of the Prometheus ship that flew them all the way to LV-223, and although he's not part of the scientific part of the expedition, he is the guy in charge of the ship. He is the captain, and I always loved his sort of laid-back attitude compared to everything that's going on in the story because, you know, they're on this big adventure to figure out the origins of, you know, humanity and the existence of extraterrestrial beings and all of this stuff, and this dude's just trying to, like, celebrate Christmas and, like, have sex with Charlize Theron. Like, he's just chilling the entire time, but he's also got such a sense of honor and heroism within himself. So obviously spoilers for all the movies, but towards the end of Prometheus, it is because of Janek making the decision to sacrifice himself and crash the Prometheus ship into the engineer ship that stops the engineers or the surviving engineer from heading to Earth to destroy it. So he really does die a hero, and without his willing sacrifice and without him being a good captain that the other crew would believe in and support and want to, you know, go down to the ship with him, then all of Earth would be destroyed. So this guy is really an unsung hero of the series. And although he's not directly focused on, he's a really important character, and I just love the way that Idris Elba plays him. At my number 9, I'm going to put Ron Perlman's character from Alien Resurrection, Janek. And Alien Resurrection was the first Alien movie that I ever saw when I was a little kid, when it came out, and I loved it, and I immediately gravitated towards Ron Perlman's character because I don't know, I always have an affinity for, like, the lovable asshole of the group, and this guy is such a dick, but at the same time, you know, he really values his crew and the people around him, and he's that, like, you know, he's the asshole, but he's our asshole kind of vibes, and I always kind of dug those characters. I love how over the top he is, and everything in that movie is over the top. It's so ridiculous. It's so absurd. Like, there's literally a scene where he's on the ladder just surviving a big encounter with an alien facehugger, whatever, and then there's a spider web with a spider right there in the ladder, freaks him out, and he pulls out his gun and shoots the spider. And that's the kind of commitment to spider eradication that I need in my life. So he definitely deserves to be on the list. At my number 8, I'm going to go with Rain from Alien Romulus. This is one of those movies that the more I watch it, the more I like it. I liked it enough when it came out in theaters in my initial review on the channel, but I've watched it like maybe 2 more times since then, and each time I like it more. And each time I'm gravitated towards Rain and Andy as characters, and Rain really is a pretty great final girl of the franchise, all things considered. But I completely sympathize with her mission to go and try to escape by any means possible, having no idea whether or not she's going to succeed, and putting herself into such dangerous territory, and then having to build into being a survivor, which is always the best sort of character arc, is when somebody is not specifically like a trained badass, you know, to begin with, and they have to find their way. They have to struggle through it in order to try to fight back, and she's not perfect. She makes a lot of mistakes, and she's terrified, you know, and I think that's the important aspect of it too, is that when you show these characters in danger, even though they're facing back against impossible odds, you still see that they're scared out of their fucking minds. And that's what I feel from her character. So all of the sympathy of what she's trying to do, the relationship dynamic she has with the other characters, and like seeing that fear, but seeing her fight back just purely out of survival in spite of that fear. All that stuff, thinking about it, watching the movie a couple of times, I really do think she deserves to be in the top 10. At my number 7 is going to be Hudson, Bill Paxton from Aliens. And this really is, most of this, I will be honest, just comes down to how much I love Bill Paxton as an actor. I love when he shows up in things, and this is probably the first movie I ever saw him in as a kid. And I love his personality. I love him being the jokester of the group, and also just a complete pessimist the entire time. Game over, man. Like, one of the most iconic lines of the entire franchise. And I always wanted him to live to the end. As much as I do like Hicks, but I always wanted Hudson to somehow make it to the end of the movie. I do like the way he goes out, just because it's an impossible task. You know what I mean? But his snarky attitude, the way that he dismisses everything, but he's not like insufferable. Like, normally if you have a character like that, they tend to be annoying, but whether it's just the charisma of Bill Paxton, just the way that he's such a great actor, you never feel annoyed with all of Hudson's complaining. You kind of like agree with him. You're like, you're right, this is kind of bullshit. So I've always loved that character, always get a kick out of him. Definitely deserves to be here. At my number 6 is going to be Dallas, who is the captain of the Nostromo, the original ship from the first movie. And again, I kind of have a hard time explaining why I like this character so much, because there's something about him that I'm just gravitated towards, that I feel like he is a legitimate, like, when I watch that movie, I really get the sense that he is the captain of the ship. I know that might sound stupid or self-explanatory, but it's just, I believe it in a second. And whether it's just the actor's ability to convey that, whether it's the script and the story, whatever, when I watch that movie and I look to Dallas, like, I really sense like that he cares about his crew, that he has a sense of authority to him, that he's been around the block, that he's done a bunch of dangerous things, that he is like terrified for the people on the crew. He's trying to make the best decisions for the crew. That doesn't always mean that it is the best decision in the movie, but you can see from his perspective that he's really trying to, do the best he can with this circumstance that nobody is prepared for. And the sequence where he takes it upon himself to go in the air ducts and, search for the alien with the flamethrower, one of the most tense, suspenseful scenes of the entire franchise. I've just always really liked this character. Every time I watch the original Alien, I always want Dallas to live just a little bit longer. At my number 5 is going to be Elizabeth Shaw from Prometheus, basically the main character, protagonist, final girl, whatever you want to call her. I'm really gravitated to her pursuit of understanding and her pursuit of exploration and adventure. And although she has all these, ideals in her head about what it could mean that aren't necessarily answered in the way that she wants them to be answered, I like her sense of wanting to explore and wanting to discover. And I do like how she deals with the aspect of her faith as well. Like, as me not being a religious person, like, I do like the idea that, as much as she discovers all of these things through, the history of, how humanity was potentially created or what that could mean, she never loses the idea that, like, well, something else might have created that, and something else it might have created that. And so she continues to go with that idea, which I think leads her to discovering more and more things. So it actually leads her into a positive direction. And of course, again, the survival aspect, like having that freaking creature inside of her where she has to, go into the medical pod, and that whole scene, just, oh my God, like, a character being able to survive an event like that and then continue going on and having to run away from an engineer, that takes a lot. That takes a lot. So yeah, I've always liked her character. I've always, I'm a Prometheus defender through and through. So, definitely deserves a spot on the list. At my number 4, some people might be upset at having a new character this high on the list, but again, after rewatching it a couple times now, I'm putting Andy, the android, at my number 4. I think that, again, the actor just does an incredible job, and I love the exploration of the AI and the synthetics in the Alien universe. As you'll see from here on up, most of my top are the androids, And with Andy, I think it's a great dynamic with Rain, because, you really feel for him as an actual person, although, it just completely comes down to his programming and the fact that he's pretty much malfunctioning, pretty much at the end of his run, doing everything that he can just to kind of like maintain that sense of loyalty to Rain. But, you know, there's so many things that are messed up within him, so many things that he doesn't understand. He's not at the top of the line. You know, he's not the best that he could be. And then he gets that upgrade chip about halfway through the movie, and you see how it changes him just purely based upon the programming. And it's kind of a scary thing to think that, like, you know, you see this person as a human being, as a brother, as a companion, and then all it takes is just a slight bit of tweaking, a slight bit of reprogramming, and he becomes almost an entirely different person. And the way the actor was able to convey that, like, and I'll be honest, the first time I watched the movie, the way that Andy was being portrayed in the first half, I was like, man, I don't know if I want to like deal with this android the whole movie. But after seeing the entire arc, and after seeing the upgrade portion and then reverting back to the original Andy, it all kind of made sense to me. And, you know, really, I think is a massively standout performance. And at my number 3, another android, it's going to be Bishop, played by Lance Hendrickson. And I love Lance Hendrickson. He shows up a couple of times in the franchise, actually, not always as the same character. But Bishop, you know, was sort of the same kind of twist that James Cameron did with Terminator eventually, where we were so conditioned to think that androids could only be evil, or not evil, but like subservient to the programming, to the point where like they're always going to be working for the mega corporation and not care about people around them, and it's going to be the mission over the people and yada yada yada. And yes, it all does come down to programming, but it also lends itself to, you know, their capacity to learn, which we'll get into in another character here momentarily. But Bishop was kind of the android character that we didn't know whether or not we could trust him, because the only other android we had seen in the series was Ash, who turned out to be, you know, just you know, that soulless being working for a corporation. And could Bishop switch at any point in time? You know, could he just turn on them? Could he decide to leave them for dead? You know, will he dispose of them in order to get a sample of the alien creature? But Bishop shows to actually be the real MVP. Bishop turns out to be a real hero by the end of the movie, and you know, gets ripped in half in the most brutal way possible, but still lives because he's an android, at least until the next movie. So yeah, Bishop is very high up there for me, but obviously the top 2 are going to be pretty self-explanatory. So number 2 is going to be David. Yeah, played by Michael Fassbender. David is a character that I just find completely compelling, and I love the story and theme around him of, you know, the creation eventually surpassing its creator and trying to figure out what it can create, and taking on the attributes of that creator, of that desire to continue to try to manifest something, to create something, to build something. And you have that drive within you. So whether that drive was taken from, you know, engineers into humanity, and from humanity into synthetics, and then from David into all of his experimentations with the black goo and making different variations of the alien creature and whatever the case may be, looking at humans as like these experimental things. And David is a character that's intimidating. He's terrifying, but he's also always kind of learning and absorbing more knowledge and absorbing more information. And it's like he has this twisted care and sensibilities towards like the people, towards Elizabeth Shaw and all of those characters, but at the same time willing to sacrifice them for what he believes is going to be his beautiful new creation. But anyways, I love the slow build to it as well, and I do like playing on it even further, going with all the synthetics that we've seen in the series. There's at least one android character in every Alien film besides like the Alien versus Predator stuff, and I love how it's always constantly evolving. You know, we go from Ash, and from that we go to Bishop, and we see a little bit more of a positive side. You know, we have Winona Ryder's character in Alien Resurrection, but then David in Prometheus takes it in a different direction. Andy took it in another direction, and it shows that there's almost just as much variety with these android characters as there are with humans, which of course goes back to the question that, you know, it's like, what makes somebody human? Like, do you need to have a soul? What is a soul? Like, all of these questions of life and being able to make your own choices and free will and all of those things that are in it, that I find interesting. You know, David kind of represents all of that. And man, for the life of me, I hope someday, maybe it's wishful thinking. I don't know. Ridley Scott is like 90 years old. I don't know if it'll ever happen, but I just want to know what happens to David after Covenant. You know, what happens? Where does he go? And does that lead into Alien, the original, somehow in some way? Just give me a little bit more of an answer. I want to know. But until then, I'll always love Prometheus and Covenant, and I love David as a character. But finally, at number one, it's really hard to put any other character at number one other than Ellen Ripley. I mean, she kind of represents Alien, like she is the ultimate survivor, the ultimate final girl. I just don't really see, as much as I love David and the concepts and the ideas behind the stuff in Prometheus, Ripley just has such a journey, such an arc. I always say she goes from being a survivor in the first movie to a hero in the second movie to basically a martyr in the third movie. And then Alien Resurrection is, I consider it a different character. It's a Ripley clone, but Sigourney Weaver's still there. I mean, how do you not put Ripley at number one? She, defines this franchise. What I like about it, too, is even though they did bring her back in Resurrection as a clone, which, again, like I said, I consider a different character, as much as I don't like Alien 3, I do kind of like how it closes out the arc. And I do kind of like that they never ruined that. They never rebooted. They never said, oh, she didn't actually die. They left it there. Resurrection's a little bit different, but you know what I'm saying? Like, she has her arc, she has her story, and it's kind of solidified that way, and I like how they've never really ruined it. My favorite thing about Ripley in the first movie is that you don't really expect her to be the main character unless obviously going into it now, Sigourney Weaver, Ripley, like reputation, right? But what I love so much about the first Alien movie is that when it starts, all of the crew of the Nostromo are introduced together in the same way. So if you went into that movie and you didn't know that Ripley was going to be the main character, it would kind of be a slow reveal and a slow surprise where throughout the course of the movie, she's kind of being the most logical out of everybody in the group. And then as it goes on, it's like more and more, and then as characters start dying off and getting picked off, and Ripley's getting more screen time and being put more into the center. But I like that slow build. I really like when movies do that. And then in Aliens, we flesh her out so much more. We learn that she had a daughter that she never got to see grow up, and then she goes on this new adventure, and again, people are trying to betray her. She's got the trauma from Ash, which leads her to not trusting Bishop, and then being able to kind of be that maternal protector of Newt, where she never got to have her own daughter. So, all of that is there. Then Alien 3. But, the ending of Alien 3 I like. So it's hard to say that Ripley's not the best character because she's just had the most to do. David is a very close second for me. There are days where I might put David above her, but I really can't deny that, Ripley really defines at least the first wave of the Alien franchise and always will. Anyways, guys, those are my top 10 characters in the Alien franchise. So let me know who your favorite characters are. You can do your top 10, top 5, whatever. And then maybe after Alien Earth premieres, I have no idea if I'm going to like it or not. I don't know. That's kind of the thing that's the most exciting about Alien Earth is like, I don't know if this show is going to be a shit show or if it's going to be fucking awesome. I hope that it's awesome, but I have no idea. So maybe after this summer, I'll have a new character to add in the top 10. I don't know. But for now, I'm going to keep it there. So let me know what you guys think. Leave all your thoughts and comments down below. Thanks as always for watching, guys. I appreciate you. And I'll talk to you next time.